The crystal towers of Thesara Prime burned against the dying sky. Captain Hana pressed her pale blue hand against the command center's viewing window, watching another section of her homeworld turn black. The Devourers were winning. They had been winning for 6 months now, and nothing the Villani did seemed to matter. "Captain, we lost contact with Defense Station 7, reported Lieutenant Day from his console. His voice shook. At 23, he was too young to remember peace. The war against the Devourers was all he had ever known. Hana nodded without turning away from the window. Station 7 had been home to 50,000 Villani souls. Now it was just another dark spot on their planet's surface, drained of all life. The Devourers did not simply kill. They consumed everything. The air, the water, even the light itself. "What about the northern continent?" Hana asked. "Communication cut off 3 hours ago," Dee replied. "The entire continent is gone." Gone. 2 billion Villani lived on the northern continent just yesterday. Now there was nothing but a dead wasteland where their cities once sparkled. Hana closed her eyes and tried to reach out with her mind, searching for any telepathic signals. From the north, she found only silence. Admiral Kwan entered the command center. His crystal blue skin had turned pale gray from stress, and his usually bright telepathic aura flickered weakly. At 90 years old, he was one of the few Villani who remembered their golden age, when their crystal ships carried peace and knowledge to 100 worlds. "The Council is asking for options," Kwan said quietly. Hana finally turned from the window. "What options?" "We tried everything. Our weapons barely scratch their ships. Our shields fail within minutes. Every ally we called refused to help, or..." She paused. "Or they're already dead." The Devourers were ancient. They had been consuming worlds since before the Villani built their first city. No weapon could stop them. No defense could hold them back. They were a force of nature, like a black hole or a dying star. "There might be something," said a new voice. Scholar Ray entered the command center, carrying an old data crystal. Her young face looked tired, but her eyes held something that had been missing from the Villani for months. Hope. "I found something in the deep archives," Ray continued. "A database we're not supposed to access. Records of species the Council, marked as too dangerous for contact." Admiral Kwan frowned. "The forbidden files?" "Ray, those records exist for good reason. The species listed there are monsters," Ray finished. "Yes. But maybe that's exactly what we need right now." She activated the data crystal. A holographic display filled the air between them. The first entry made everyone step back in shock. "Sol 3, also called Terra or Earth," Ray read aloud. "Home to the species designated as human. Classification: Apex Predator. Homeworld status: Class Tulikion Death World. Warning level: Extreme caution advised." The hologram showed images that seemed impossible. A blue-green planet covered in violent storms, massive creatures with teeth like swords, and landscapes that would kill most spacefaring species within minutes. But walking through all of this death were bipedal beings that seemed perfectly comfortable in their deadly home. "Listen to this," Ray continued reading. "Humans evolved on a planet where 99% of all life forms eventually went extinct. They survived ice ages that lasted thousands of years, explosions that blocked out their sun, and rocks from space that hit their world like planet-killer weapons. They had to fight for survival against creatures that would be apex predators on any civilized world." Lieutenant Day looked sick. "They sound horrible." "It gets worse," Ray said. "They wage war as naturally as they breathe. Their concept of peace is just the time between battles while they prepare for the next fight. They have weapons that can destroy entire cities in seconds, and they've used them on their own kind." Admiral Kwan shook his head. "This is madness. We can't contact creatures like that. They would probably help the Devourers destroy us faster." But Hana was studying the display more carefully. At the bottom of the file, she found something that made her telepathic heart skip a beat. "Wait," she said. "Look at this line here. Despite their violent nature, humans have been observed to exhibit strong protective behaviors toward species they judge as innocent or worthy of protection. They form emotional attachments quickly, and will sacrifice themselves for others, even strangers. The room fell silent. Outside, another explosion lit up the darkening sky as the Devourers consumed another Villani city. They protect others? Lieutenant Day asked quietly. Ray nodded. According to the files, yes. They have something called empathy that makes them fight harder for others than they do for themselves, but she hesitated. But they also have something called rage that makes them incredibly dangerous when something they care about is threatened. Admiral Kwan was quiet for a long moment, studying the horrible images of Earth. Finally, he spoke. The Council will never approve this. Contact with a class thought on these Deathworld species, it's against every law we have. The Council approved the evacuation order this morning, Hana said softly. We have maybe 2 days before the planet is completely consumed. After that, there won't be a council left to approve anything. Through the command center's speakers came the sound of distant explosions. The Devourers were getting closer to their bunker. Soon, they would be trapped underground while their world died above them. The message would have to be sent telepathically, Ray explained. Our quantum communicators can't reach that far, and we don't have time for normal space transmission. But a telepathic broadcast strong enough to reach Earth would use the last of our planet's psychic energy reserves. So we get one chance, Hana said. One chance, Ray agreed. Admiral Kwan looked at the images of humans again. They were smaller than Villani, with strange skin and hair that came in different colors. But their eyes held something that the Devourers had drained from every other species they'd encountered. Humans looked like they were ready to fight anything. If we do this, Kwan said slowly, and they agree to help, what makes you think they can succeed where we failed? Hana touched the window again. Outside, the crystal city that had been her home for 40 years was slowly turning black as the Devourers drained its life away. Because, she said, maybe it takes monsters to fight monsters. The decision was made. Within hours, every surviving Villani telepath on Thesara Prime would combine their remaining strength to send one desperate message across the galaxy. They would call out to Earth, to the species known as humanity, and beg the universe's most feared predators to save them. It was their last hope. It was probably a terrible mistake, but it was all they had left. Dr. June was explaining quantum biology to his students at Seoul University when the vision hit him like a hammer. One moment he was pointing at a holographic DNA strand, and the next moment his mind was flooded with images of crystal beings dying under a black sky. He saw their cities burning. He felt their terror as massive ships blotted out their sun. But most of all, he felt their desperate hope. Hope directed at creatures they had been taught to fear. Hope directed at humanity. The vision lasted only seconds, but when it ended, Dr. June found himself on his knees in front of 200 shocked students. Around the world, 8 billion humans had just experienced the same thing. Every person on Earth had simultaneously witnessed the final moments of an alien civilization. The phone started ringing immediately. "Professor, are you okay?" asked one of his students, but June was already running toward his office. He had to call the Space Defense Authority. Whatever had just happened, it was big enough to touch every human mind on the planet at once. 3. Hours later, Dr. June sat in a secure briefing room at SDA headquarters. Around the table were Earth's top military commanders, scientists, and government officials. Everyone looked shaken. The telepathic message had been translated into every human language simultaneously, leaving no doubt about its meaning. Admiral Sung, commander of Earth's Space Defense Forces, read the translation aloud. To the species of Sol 3, known as humans, we are the Villani of Thesara Prime. Our world is dying. An ancient enemy called the Devourers has come to consume all life in our system. We have tried everything. All our allies are gone. You are our final hope. The message continued with technical details that made the scientists in the room gasp in amazement. Crystal matrix computers that could process information faster than anything humans had ever built. Medical technology that could regrow limbs in minutes. Ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of centuries. They're offering us their entire technological database, said Dr. Yun, Earth's leading physicist. This is knowledge that could advance human civilization by thousands of years. But Admiral Sung was more interested in the tactical information. Look at these specifications about the Devourers. Living ships that adapt to any weapon. Energy fields that can drain the life out of entire continents. No wonder every other species runs from them. General Bin, Earth's most decorated combat veteran, studied the data with professional interest. They're not invincible. Look here. They need time to adapt to new threats. Their consumption process requires specific conditions. And they've never fought anyone who actually wanted to. Fight back? What do you mean? Asked President Namdot. General Bin smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Every species they've encountered before has tried to negotiate or evacuate. Nobody has ever just attacked them, really attacked them, with everything they had. Doctor, June spoke up. The message says they chose us because we're classified as an apex predator species. They think we're monsters. Maybe we are, said Admiral Sung. But maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs right now. The debate that followed was intense but brief. Some argued that humanity wasn't ready for galactic warfare. Earth's ships were slower than the aliens, their weapons more primitive. Others pointed out that the Devourers would eventually reach human space anyway. Better to fight them at the Sarah Prime than around Earth. There's something else to consider, said Dr. Min, a psychologist who specialized in combat stress. The aliens sent us detailed scans of Devourer behavior. These things don't just kill, they feed on fear and despair. But humans, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Humans get excited by danger. We actually fight better when we're scared. General Bin nodded. I've seen it 1,000 times. Put a human soldier in an impossible situation and half the time they'll do something so crazy it actually works. President. Nam looked around the table. So we're seriously considering this? Flying across the galaxy to fight an enemy that has defeated every advanced civilization it's encountered? They defeated civilized species, Admiral Sung corrected. They've never fought barbarians. The vote was unanimous. Earth would answer the Volani's call for help. The reply that went back to Thesara Prime was short and simple. Message received. Help is coming. Hold the line. But privately, the transformation of human civilization began immediately. Every shipyard from Luna Station to the asteroid mining platforms received new orders. Every military unit on Earth started emergency training. The planet's entire industrial capacity began shifting toward a single goal, building a war fleet capable of fighting the galaxy's greatest nightmare. Dr. June found himself appointed as humanity's first xenobiology expert, tasked with studying the Volani data to understand both the aliens they were trying to save and the enemies they would face. What he discovered amazed him. The Volani were everything humans were not. Peaceful, telepathic, technologically advanced but completely unprepared for real warfare. They had built a civilization based on cooperation and understanding. War, to them, was a theoretical concept they studied but never practiced. The Devourers, on the other hand, were something that shouldn't exist. Ancient biomechanical entities that consumed not just life but the very concept of hope itself. They had been destroying civilizations since before humans learned to use fire. It's perfect, Dr. June realized as he studied the data late one night. The Devourers feed on despair. They need their victims to lose hope. But humans, he laughed despite himself. Humans are too stubborn to give up. We get more determined when things look impossible. Within weeks, the first human warships began launching from Earth's orbital shipyards. They were smaller than the massive vessels other species used, but they carried something no alien ship had ever mounted. Weapons designed by a species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. Nuclear missiles that could crack moons. Kinetic projectiles that hit with the force of asteroids. Energy weapons powered by the same fusion reactions that lit Earth's sun. And piloting these weapons were humans, creatures who had learned to fly by strapping themselves to controlled explosions and hoping for the best. The fleet that assembled at Titan Station would have been laughably small by galactic standards. 50 ships carrying 10,000 humans. But each ship carried more destructive potential than most species used in entire wars. More importantly, they carried something the Devourers had never encountered. Warriors who treated desperate odds as a personal challenge. Captain Du, commanding the flagship UES Tenacity, reviewed the tactical data one last time before departure. The Devourers had certain patterns, predictable behaviors that could be exploited by an enemy willing to take enormous casualties for strategic advantage. "Admiral," she reported to Sung over the comm system. "My crews are ready. We've studied the enemy data and we think we can hurt them. Really hurt them." "What's your assessment, Captain?" Captain Du looked out at the human fleet. 50 ships crewed by 10,000 volunteers who had signed up to fight an enemy they'd never seen, to save aliens they'd never met, in a battle they might not survive. "Sir, the Devourers have been eating civilized species for millions of years. They know how to fight soldiers and scholars and diplomats." She smiled. "But they've never fought pirates and warriors and the kind of crazy people who strap themselves to rockets for fun." Admiral Sung's voice came back with barely controlled excitement. "All ships prepare for jump to Thesara Prime. Let's show the galaxy what Earth's children can do." As the human fleet vanished into hyperspace, Earth continued its mobilization. More ships were being built. More weapons were being tested. Because humanity had learned something important from the Villani message. They were not alone in the universe. And if there were monsters out there threatening the innocent, well, Earth had monsters of its own. Earth had become a weapon factory. Engineer Hyun stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, watching the largest military construction project in human history. Ships were being built faster than anyone thought possible, but they weren't. The elegant vessels that other species preferred. These were human warships, ugly, practical, and designed to hurt things. "How many more days?" asked Admiral Sung, joining Hyun at the viewing window. "The main fleet will be ready in 6 days," Hyun replied. "But Admiral, I have to tell you, what we're building isn't like anything the galaxy has seen before. Other species make war machines. We're making human war machines." The difference was important. While aliens built ships, with energy shields and particle beam weapons, humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of throwing very heavy objects very fast. The new human warships bristled with railguns that could fire projectiles at 15% of light speed, missile pods carrying nuclear warheads and something no other species had ever thought to build. Weapons that turned nuclear explosions into focused beams of death. Dr. Min was working in her psychology lab when the first reports came in from the advanced scouts. Captain Kim had taken 3 fast ships to observe Thesara Prime from a distance, and what she found changed everything. "The Devourers aren't just destroying the planet," Captain Kim reported over the quantum communicator. "They're farming it. They attack in patterns designed to maximize fear and despair before they consume an area. It's like they're seasoning their food with terror." Dr. Min studied the tactical data with growing excitement. That's their weakness, she realized. They need their victims to be afraid. But humans... She started laughing, which made her assistants nervous. "Humans get excited by impossible odds. We find fear exhilarating." The difference was crucial. Every other species the Devourers had encountered became less effective as the situation got worse. But humans had evolved as persistence predators. They got more determined when their prey fought back, more creative when their usual tactics failed, and absolutely vicious when something threatened their pack. Dr. June was working with Villani technical data when he made another important discovery. The aliens' technology was incredible, but it was designed by a peaceful species. Their weapons were meant to disable, not destroy. Their defenses were meant to delay, not devastate. "We need to modify everything," he told the engineering teams. "The Villani crystal technology is amazing, but they never figured out how to make it really dangerous. We need to fix that." Human engineers went to work with the enthusiasm of children given new toys. Villani crystal matrices were redesigned to focus nuclear explosions. Alien healing technology was modified to keep human soldiers fighting with wounds that should have killed them. Most importantly, Vallani telepathic communication systems were adapted to work with human neural patterns. The result was something that had never existed before. A human war fleet with alien technology, designed not just to win battles but to terrify enemies who thought they had seen everything the galaxy could throw at them. Captain Du stood on the bridge of the UES Tenacity, watching her crew make final preparations. Her ship was the flagship of humanity's response to the crisis, and it showed. The Tenacity mounted weapons that could crack small moons, carried fighters piloted by humans who considered atmospheric re-entry a recreational activity, and was crewed by Marines who had volunteered to board enemy ships armed with nuclear grenades. "Captain, we're receiving an update from Thesara Prime," reported Lieutenant Han from the communications station. "The Vallani have maybe 2 days left. The Devourers are closing in on their last stronghold." Captain Du nodded. They would arrive, just in time if they were lucky. If they weren't lucky, they would arrive to find nothing but a dead world and an enemy fleet gorged on Vallani life energy. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "All ships prepare for combat jump. We're going in hot." Marine. Colonel Tay was addressing his troops in the ship's main bay. 3,000 human Marines in powered armor, carrying weapons that most aliens would consider war crimes. They had trained for 6 months in zero-gravity combat, boarding actions, and fighting in environments that would kill unprotected humans. In seconds, "Listen up," Colonel Tay said to his troops. "What we're about to do has never been done before. We're going to board Devourer ships, living ships that adapt to any threat, and we're going to plant nuclear charges in their hearts. The enemy is ancient, experienced, and considers itself invincible." The Marines were grinning. Colonel Tay smiled back at them. "They've never fought humans before. They don't know that we're too stupid to know when we're beaten. They don't know that we get more aggressive when we're scared. And they definitely don't know that we consider impossible odds a personal insult." The cheering from the Marines could be heard throughout the ship. Dr. Yun had been studying the Devourer ships from the tactical data, and what she found was both terrifying and encouraging. The alien vessels were more like living organisms than spacecraft. They could heal damage, adapt to new weapons, and grow stronger by consuming other ships. But they had never encountered an enemy that fought like humans. Other species tried to minimize casualties and preserve their forces. Humans were willing to trade ships, crews, and entire fleets for strategic advantage. The Devourer's adaptive abilities would be useless against enemies who never used the same tactic twice. "We need to hit them with everything at once," she explained to Admiral Sung. "Every type of weapon, every kind of attack, all simultaneously. They can adapt to anything we throw at them, but only if they survive long enough to figure out what we're doing." Admiral Sung understood. "So we don't give them time to adapt. We hit them so hard and so fast that they don't get a chance to learn." The final element of the human response was something no other species possessed: absolute confidence in their own insanity. Humans had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting opponents that were bigger, stronger, and better armed. They had learned to compensate with creativity, stubbornness, and a willingness to try tactics that no sane being would consider. Captain So, commanding the destroyer UES Defiance, had spent weeks studying Devourer ship patterns. She had identified their weak points, their predictable behaviors, and their tendency to underestimate smaller opponents. "We're going to ram them," she announced to her crew. "Not just attack them, actually ram our ship into theirs at maximum velocity. The impact will breach their adaptive armor, and our boarding teams can get inside before they can seal the breach." Her crew accepted this plan without question. They were humans. Ramming the enemy was just another Tuesday. As the human fleet completed its preparations, messages arrived from across the galaxy. Other species had heard about humanity's response to the Vallani crisis. Most were shocked that anyone would be crazy enough to fight the Devourers directly. A few sent messages of support. But one message was different. It came from the hegemony of peaceful worlds, the same organization that had quarantined Earth for being too violent. To the humans of Sol 3, the message read, "We have reconsidered our previous assessment of your species. If you can accomplish what no civilized race has managed, if you can make the Devourers retreat, then perhaps the galaxy has been wrong about the value of warriors." Admiral Sung read the message to his fleet commanders. Ladies and gentlemen, the galaxy thinks we're insane for trying this. They're probably right, but the Villani asked for our help, and we don't abandon people who ask for our protection. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying 10,000 warriors toward a battle that would either save a civilization or add humanity to the list of species consumed by the galaxy's greatest nightmare. But for the first time in human history, they were fighting a war where they were unquestionably the heroes. And humans had never fought better than when they knew they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a pack of hungry wolves, and the galaxy learned why Earth was classified as a death world. Captain Du stood on the bridge of the UES Tenacity, watching the tactical display as 50 human ships materialized in the outer edge of the Thessara system. Before them spread the most terrifying sight in known space, the Devourer fleet. Hundreds of massive bioships, each one larger than a human city, slowly consuming everything in the system that had once been alive. My God, whispered Lieutenant Han at the sensor station. Captain, they're enormous. The smallest one is 10 times bigger than our largest ship. Good, Captain Du replied calmly. Big targets are easier to hit. All ships, attack pattern Alpha. No warnings, no negotiations, no mercy. What happened next had never occurred in the millions of years the Devourers had terrorized the galaxy. Instead of trying to communicate or negotiate, instead of running away or begging for mercy, the human fleet attacked immediately with a level of coordinated violence that caught even ancient predators off guard. The first wave of human missiles struck the Devourer ships before they could react. Nuclear warheads designed to crack asteroids detonated against bioarmor that had never encountered such primitive, brutal weapons. Railgun projectiles moving at 15% of light speed punched through adaptive hulls that were still trying to figure out what they were being hit with. On Thessara Prime, Scholar Ray monitored the battle from the Villani command bunker. The planet's surface was almost completely consumed now, but their deep sensors could still track what was happening in space. What she saw made her question everything she thought she knew about warfare. They're not fighting like any species we've ever recorded, she reported to Captain Hana. Look at this, they're using their smallest ships as missiles, ramming them into Devourer vessels at full speed. And their crews they're laughing. The human ships moved like a school of piranha attacking a larger predator. They swarmed around the massive Devourer vessels, too small and fast to be caught easily, hitting and running and coming back for more. But most amazingly, when a human ship was destroyed, the others didn't retreat. They got more aggressive. Captain So's destroyer, the UES Defiance, demonstrated this perfectly. When a Devourer bioship managed to catch her vessel with an energy drain beam, Captain So ordered full power to engines and rammed her ship directly into the enemy's hull at maximum velocity. All hands prepare for boarding action, she announced calmly as her ship tore a hole in the alien vessel's armor. Marines, you have nuclear charges and 15 minutes before this ship's reactor goes critical. Make them count. The Marines poured through the breach in their power armor, carrying weapons that no civilized species would use inside a spacecraft. They fought through corridors filled with acid, radiation, and biological horrors that had been designed to inspire primal terror in any thinking being. The Devourers had never encountered enemies who treated mortal danger as entertainment. Contact. Left, shouted Sergeant Lee, firing his plasma rifle at something that looked like a nightmare made of teeth and claws. Holy hell, these things are ugly. Ugly but slow, replied Private Yoon, tossing a grenades down a corridor filled with biomechanical tentacles. Come on, people, we've got charges to plant and a schedule to keep. The human Marines advanced through the living ship like antibodies fighting an infection, except they were having fun doing it. Every time they encountered something that should have terrified them, they found new ways to kill it creatively. Dr. June, monitoring the battle from his mobile laboratory aboard the Tenacity, was making crucial discoveries about Devourer psychology. The ancient predators fed on fear and despair, literally drawing energy from the emotional states of their victims. But humans were radiating something the Devourers had never encountered: pure, savage joy in combat. Captain, "You need to see this," he reported to Captain Doe. "The Devourers can't feed while we're near them. Human brain chemistry during combat is actually disrupting their consumption process. We're creating dead zones where they can't absorb energy." This explained why the tide of battle was turning. For millions of years, the Devourers had grown, stronger as their battles progressed, feeding on the terror and hopelessness of their enemies. But human warriors got more dangerous as fights continued, not weaker. The psychological warfare that had always been the Devourer's greatest weapon was backfiring spectacularly. Captain Hana, coordinating Volani resistance from the deep bunkers, felt something she had thought was lost forever. Hope. Not just because the humans were winning individual battles, but because of how they were winning. Every human casualty was met not with despair, but with increased fury from their comrades. They treated their losses as fuel for their rage rather than reasons to retreat. "The human ships are breaking through to the command vessel," reported Lieutenant Day. Captain, they're not trying to disable it. They're trying to destroy it completely." The human assault on the Devourer flagship was led by Marine Colonel Tay himself. His boarding party had fought through 3 kilometers of living ship, planting nuclear charges at every critical system they could find. Now they were in the ship's heart, facing something that had commanded fleets when Earth was still covered in dinosaurs. The Devourer Admiral was a creature of pure nightmare, a biomechanical entity the size of a building, with consciousness that spanned millennia and power that could drain the life from entire solar systems. It had faced 10,000 different species across the galaxy and consumed them all, but it had never faced anything like Colonel Tay and his Marines. "That's the ugliest thing I've ever seen," Colonel Tay announced cheerfully, raising his plasma cannon. "And I once had to clean up after a reactor leak on Europa." The battle that followed was more like an extermination than a fight. The Devourer Admiral had powers that could crush minds and weapons that could disintegrate matter. But Colonel Tay's Marines had something more important. They were having the time of their lives. "Sir, charges are in place," reported Sergeant Park, dodging a blast of energy that would have vaporized a normal human. Her power armor was already heavily damaged, but she was grinning inside her helmet. "We can blow this thing to pieces whenever you're ready." "Outstanding," Colonel Tay replied, firing his cannon at the creature's main sensor cluster. "All units, this is your 10-second warning. Time to see if these ancient monsters can swim in vacuum." The nuclear charges detonated simultaneously throughout the Devourer flagship. The explosion was visible from Thesara Prime's surface as the massive bioship broke apart in a flash of atomic fire. But more importantly, the death scream of the Devourer Admiral echoed through hyperspace, a psychic shriek that was heard by every spacefaring species in that section of the galaxy. For the first time in cosmic history, the Devourers retreated. Captain Dew watched from the Tenacity's bridge as the remaining Devourer ships began withdrawing from the Thesara system. They moved slowly, deliberately, but they were definitely leaving. The ancient predators who had never known defeat were abandoning their prey. "All ships pursue and destroy," she ordered. "Don't let any of them escape to report what happened here." The human fleet chased the retreating Devourers through the outer system, destroying every bioship they could catch. It wasn't mercy that drove them. It was the practical understanding that survivors could warn other Devourer fleets about human tactics. Admiral Sung's voice came over the fleet communication system. "Outstanding work, people. We just did something that was supposed to be impossible. But remember, this is just the beginning. The galaxy is going to learn what happens when someone threatens people under human protection." As the last Devourer ship vanished into hyperspace, the human fleet turned toward Thesara Prime. The Volani homeworld was scarred and wounded, but it was alive. More importantly, its people had survived to see something that hadn't happened in millions of years. The Devourers had been defeated. The news would spread across the galaxy at light speed. Every civilization would learn that there was finally a species capable of fighting the ancient nightmares and winning. Some would be grateful. Others would be terrified. But on Thesara Prime, the surviving Volani emerged from their bunkers to find human ships landing to offer medical aid and reconstruction assistance. The galaxy's most feared predators had become their protectors. The age of the Devourers was ending. The age of human protection had begun. The victory at Thessera Prime changed everything, but victory always comes with a price. Admiral Sung stood on the bridge of the UES Tenacity, looking out at what remained of the human fleet. 50 ships had entered the battle. Only 17 survived. 6,000 humans had died fighting an enemy they had never seen before, to save aliens they had never met, in a war that wasn't their own. By human standards, it had been a costly victory. By galactic standards, it was impossible. No species in recorded history had ever forced the Devourers to retreat. The ancient predators had consumed civilizations across 1 million worlds, but they had never faced creatures from a death world who treated impossible odds as a personal challenge. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from across the galaxy," reported Lieutenant Han. 47 different species want to establish diplomatic contact. The Galactic Council is requesting an immediate audience and— He paused. "The hegemony of peaceful worlds is offering a formal apology and asking for a defense treaty." Admiral Sung almost smiled. 6 months ago, those same peaceful worlds had voted to quarantine Earth because humans were too violent for civilized space. Now they wanted human protection. On Thessera Prime, the work of rebuilding had begun. Captain Hana, now promoted to planetary coordinator, worked alongside human engineers to repair the damage the Devourers had caused. The partnership was surprisingly effective. Vellani crystal technology could accelerate human healing and construction techniques, while human engineering made everything more resilient against future attacks. "Your species amazes us," Hana told Dr. June as they surveyed a reconstruction site where humans and Vellani worked side by side. "We expected warriors. We found protectors." Dr. June watched a human construction crew teaching young Vellani how to operate heavy machinery. The aliens were fascinated by human tools, crude compared to their crystal technology, but incredibly effective. "We're both," he said. "Warriors when we need to be, protectors when someone needs protecting." The cultural exchange was producing unexpected results. Scholar Ray had established the Academy of Defensive Arts, where young Vellani learned human tactical thinking while human cadets studied Vellani telepathic coordination. The combination was creating something new, warriors who could fight with both human determination and alien wisdom. But the most significant changes were happening across the galaxy. Dr. Min's psychological study of human combat behavior had been distributed to every military academy in known space. Her report, titled "Why Deathworld Predators Make Ideal Guardians," was being translated into hundreds of languages. The key insight was simple but revolutionary. Humans were the only known species that became more protective, not less, when faced with overwhelming odds. Most civilizations grew cautious when threatened. Humans grew ferocious when something they cared about was in danger. Engineer Hyun was leading the technological exchange program that was making both species stronger. Human kinetic weapons combined with Vellani crystal matrices created defensive systems that could protect entire star systems. Vellani healing technology enhanced with human surgical techniques could save soldiers from injuries that would have been instantly fatal before. "We're building something that's never existed," Hyun explained to the joint engineering teams. "Not human technology or Vellani technology, but something new. Something designed specifically to fight things like the Devourers." The political implications were spreading across the galaxy like shockwaves. The Galactic Council, which had dismissed humanity as barbaric primitives, now found itself inundated with requests from member species asking for human military assistance. 3 star systems had already offered full alliance treaties. A dozen more had sent diplomatic missions to Earth, but not everyone was happy about humanity's emergence as a galactic power. The hegemony of advanced beings, a collection of species that considered themselves the galaxy's natural leaders, was deeply disturbed by the idea that primitive Deathworld dwellers could succeed where they had failed. "This changes the entire balance of power," their ambassador complained to the Galactic Council. "If every species starts believing that violence is the answer to their problems, then maybe fewer species will end up as devourer food." interrupted Captain Doe, who was representing humanity at the emergency council session. The Devourers fed on civilized species for millions of years, because civilized species were too civilized to fight back properly. The truth was uncomfortable, but undeniable. Peaceful, advanced civilizations had proven helpless against an enemy that fed on fear and despair. It had taken barbarians from a death world to show the galaxy that some problems could only be solved with superior firepower and an absolute refusal to surrender. Marine Colonel Tay was training the first joint human-Vellani military units when the next crisis emerged. Long-range scouts reported that the Devourers were massing in the galactic core, apparently preparing for a massive counteroffensive. But they also brought news that 17 different species had sent requests for human protection. "Sir, we can't be everywhere at once," reported Major Kim, studying the tactical situation. "The Devourers are preparing to hit multiple systems simultaneously. They're learning from what happened at Thesera Prime." Colonel Tay nodded. The ancient predators were adapting their strategy. Instead of attacking one system at a time, they were preparing coordinated strikes across the galaxy. No single human fleet could stop them all. "Then we don't use single fleets," he decided. "We train every species that wants protection to fight like humans. We give them our weapons, our tactics, and most importantly, our attitude." The idea was revolutionary. Instead of trying to protect the entire galaxy with human forces, they would teach other species to protect themselves using human methods. It meant sharing Earth's most closely guarded military secrets with aliens they had known for less than a year. Admiral Sung approved the plan immediately. The Devourers succeed because their enemies give up hope. We'll teach the galaxy that hope isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about being so dangerous that conflicts avoid you. Captain Hana was working in her office when the communication came in, a message that would define humanity's role in the galaxy for centuries to come. It was from a small agricultural world called Haven, located near the galactic rim. The Devourers had found them, and their plea for help was heartbreakingly familiar. But this time, the response was different. Instead of just humans answering, the Call 17 species offered assistance. Vellani crystal ships carrying human weapons, hegemony battlecruisers with human tactical advisors. Even the peaceful meditation world sent support vessels, armed for the first time in their 1,000-year history. "This is Admiral Chang of the Joint Fleet responding to Haven's distress call," came the transmission. Chang was human, but her fleet included ships from a dozen different species, all trained in human tactical doctrine. "We are en route. Hold the line." Scholar Ray, now serving as Earth's first alien ambassador, watched the joint fleet depart from Thesera Prime's orbital station. The sight would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Human ships flying alongside alien vessels, all united in the defense of innocents they had never met. "Your species has given us something we didn't know we had lost," she told Dr. June. "The belief that monsters can be fought and defeated." Dr. June nodded, watching the fleet disappear into hyperspace. "Every human child learns the same lesson growing up. There are monsters in the dark, but there are also heroes who fight them. We just never imagined we would be the heroes." The message that went out across the galaxy that day came not just from humanity, but from the growing alliance of species that had learned human methods of warfare. It was broadcast on every frequency, translated into every known language. "To any civilization facing extinction from forces beyond your ability to resist, you are not alone. Help is coming. The monsters of Terra stand ready to be your monsters, and they have taught us to be monsters too." The galaxy would never be the same. The age of the Devourers was ending, not because they had been destroyed, but because their prey had learned to fight back. Humanity had given the galaxy something more valuable than advanced technology or powerful weapons. They had given them hope, backed up by an absolute refusal to surrender, and the firepower to make that refusal stick. The price of becoming galactic heroes had been high, thousands of human lives, the transformation of Earth into a military powerhouse, and the end of humanity's isolation from galactic politics. But in return they had gained something beyond price, the knowledge that when darkness threatened the innocent, there would always be someone willing to stand in its way. The stars were no longer dark and empty. They were full of civilizations that had learned from Earth's children that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be very, very good at war.